Hello and a very warm welcome. Thank you very much indeed for joining. My name is David Roth from WPP, and it's a pleasure and delight to have you today with us for this Chewing the Fat session. Now, normally our Chewing the Fat sessions are very discursive with not a chart in sight, but this one's going to be slightly different because we have some very interesting data that we want to share with you. Now, like everybody around the world, we have all seen ourselves using technology, internet, more and more over the course of the past few months. And our digital behavior, both as individuals and collectively around the world, has changed significantly over the period from pre-COVID to where we are today. And it's that we're going to spend our time today in this Chewing the Fat session looking at and understanding. I'm very glad to be able to welcome Jean-Marc, who is the head of strategy and head of collaborations and associations and partnerships at Contentsquare. Jean-Marc, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Hi, David. It's a big pleasure to be here with you today.
Well, you sit on a real treasure trove of data, and one of the reasons it's so rich and so empowering is it's not your standard sort of survey-based data. This is data actually looking at what we all around the world have been doing over the course of the past few months. And I suppose the question that we all have in our minds as we sort of go forward from where we are now to planning for September, October, obviously the holiday period as well, and then strategic planning for many organizations will still start in September and October for 2021 plans, which will be very different to, I think, what most companies were anticipating their 2020 plans were going to be. But that unanswered question is, what behaviors have we seen over the course of the last few months? What is going to continue and what will snap back to where they are? And you sit on, I suppose, the potential answers to all of that. So before we ask you to help us investigate what our own behaviors have been, be interesting to see how many people can recognize their own behavior from some of the data we're going to show. I think the first thing is, can you explain a little bit about who Contentsquare are and the source of that data? Of course, we were delighted at WPP to have associations with Contentsquare. You participated in our Startup Nation Tour of Israel for the last couple of years and our virtual Startup Nation Tour of a couple of months ago because we had to cancel the physical one or postpone it. And I know that you work with a number of our WPP agents and indeed, as happens, a number of our clients as well. So over to you. Explain, for those who don't know, who Contentsquare are and what data you have.
Yes, thank you, David. So Contentsquare is actually a bit more than a startup. We are what I would call a scale-up company, about 650 people. In 7 offices around the world. And what we do, we capture everything that is happening on the website of our clients, website, mobile, desktop, and app. So every single movement of the mouse, every single movement of the finger on mobile is captured by the technology. And we aggregate all those data in a fully anonymous way. So it's fully GDPR compliant and also with California law. Compliant of privacy, and we translate that into insights for clients to make the best decision to improve the experience that they serve to their clients worldwide. We have about 700 clients. We raised a total of close to $300 million over the recent years, 190 on Series D. And so quite a successful company. In terms of our client, I have one slide that I can share. So here you see a snapshot of our clients. What's interesting with Contentsquare is that we span across many verticals. So very strong in traditional retail, big box, you see Walmart in a few countries, Carrefour, like in a French company. So in France, we have Carrefour, Auchan, many retailers like Kia worldwide, Sainsbury in the UK, Best Buy. And then very strong also in luxury fashion beauty, which is my background. Before joining Contentsquare, I was a chief strategy officer for Tiffany. And before that, I spent 20 years with Boston Consulting Group in charge of luxury worldwide.
Well,
so,
I mean, that's quite intriguing in its own right, because actually luxury players were amazingly slow to embrace digital technology in all sorts of forms. So interesting to get your observations on.
I'll show you. I'll show you. Maybe we'll do a deep dive on luxury. This is a sector I care about, and so I'll show you how it worked for them during this period. But then we also serve non-e-commerce business. We have a lot of technology clients. We have a lot of bank, insurance, a lot of telecom players, a lot of automotive players, for example, as well. So even when you don't have a pure e-commerce website, we can help you to build the best experience. And more than words, I was going to show you how it works.
Please do.
So being an ex-executive at Tiffany, I took the freedom to take the Tiffany website, and this is a little bit of a modeling. And of course,
well, it's still, do you know that Tiffany blue? I mean, it's amazing how a color really is so evocative. All you need to see is that Tiffany blue, and you know exactly who it is.
Absolutely. So I'm on the Tiffany website from the last few weeks, I think. And basically, since when David goes on Tiffany, or when Jean-Marc goes on Tiffany, we capture every single movement of the mouse or finger. We're able to aggregate and to give statistic by zone. And the way we display it for clients is very powerful. It's basically, your website becomes a dashboard. So with one click, you start getting data on different performance or for different zones of your website. We have like 20 KPIs, so we know when people hesitate. We have an hesitation time. We have frustration metrics when people double click, when there is a click rate like that. We have click, we know when they're exposed. We have attractiveness score when people see and click versus when they don't see, we know that. And then ultimately, we're also able to attribute dollars because we go transactions, so we're able to track when people are buying. And so we can tell any of our clients that this specific image, this specific story is actually generating much more than the one of last week, for example. This type of insights, or at your finger.
And in a sense, you do the hard work for people, presumably, which is
yes.
I might have gone to a very non-linear journey from that image on the right hand or left hand side for that ring to actually purchasing it. But you can actually track the various ways that I've been through.
Absolutely, we make
purchased.
Yes, absolutely. We make big data simple. We try to make digestible and insightful, very complex data. That's our business, basically. And so that our clients can really improve the experience and sell the experience for their clients. So that's Contentsquare.
Is that all in real time in a sense? If I make changes to my website, can I immediately?
Yes, it's quasi real time. We have 1 hour time lapse. It's quasi, and we are working to be real time. So as you understand and as you describe it, this is not a survey. This is actual data, actual visitor, actual David or Jean-Marc that goes on hundreds and even like close to 1,000 websites that we've been monitoring. This represents, in fact, 10 billion sessions. So 10 billion times a Jean-Marc or a David is coming on a Tiffany or a Best Buy or whatever. And this is traffic coming from 26 countries. Although our footprint is more European and American, we're half American clients, European clients, very strong in France, of course, very strong in the UK, very strong in Germany, Italy, Spain, Nordics. We also get a lot of traffic from China, from Japan, especially on sectors that are global, like you were talking about luxury. Our clients are global, so the traffic is really global. So that's basically what we've done, and the methodology. And then I'll start understanding what happened and what will last and all that, because I see the data has been very insightful for us. Basically, we looked at pre-COVID time, which was before Feb 15. And here I put at the top, you see Google Trend. It's really on Feb 15 that things start to accelerate. And then, of course, the confinement started in March 9 in Italy, or March, I think, 15 in France, and UK and US was more late March 22. And the reopening started May 4, May 11, depending on the country. So that's what we've observed, always comparing to what happened pre-crisis, before the crisis, the first 6 weeks of the year. Now, if you want, David, I'm happy to jump into the data and show you a little bit of what we found.
Yes, I think let's do that, and then we can discuss the implications of it all.
Excellent. So here you see the traffic week on week, starting from the reference period, which is before COVID, so like the first 6 weeks of the year average. And you can see late February, beginning of March, traffic was slightly down, -5%. So no real rush online, no real interest. You see that when the confinement really started to accelerate in the Western world, that week of March 16 to March 22 is when you see a strong acceleration of traffic, and traffic from -5, this is an index, went up to +30. And then reopening started again, depending on the country. In some states in the US, it was May 4th. I know Macy's opened 50 stores on May 4th. And then France was May 11. UK was a bit later than that. So it's a mix of different countries that you see here. But you can see that the traffic started to decrease quite a bit, and frankly, to stabilize at index 100. And right now, we are exactly at index 100. This data is fresh from 10 days ago. Sunday, July 19 is our last day in December.
Right. Oh, wow. So very fresh data. Can you put a little bit of context? So from an index of 95 to 125, is that the highest growth rate that you've seen in the past? In a month, you don't see. You can have clients or individual clients, or sometimes individual sectors in a given country that can have a spike of 25, 30 points in a couple of weeks. But you don't, sometimes you see just 1 week, like if it's Mother's Day in the UK, okay, jewelry in the UK is going to go up 30% maybe. But you don't see this type of trajectory where it's consistent that every week it goes up by 5, 10 points. And you don't see that when it's across sector, across country. Usually it's much, much, much flatter. So here you have something very, very different and very strong. And the period from the peak, the 126 or whatever, down to 100. What do you think has driven that decline, in a sense? Well, it's not decline, but an overall slowdown in traffic.
The same way that what drove the surge is that stores were closed. So at some point, this was the only way to go online, to buy something. The only way to buy fashion, the only way to buy luxury in the US, in UK, in France, in Germany, was to go online. So that explained the surge. And similarly, when stores started to reopen, I was expecting a decrease. I was not sure if it was going to go back to 100 or stay high, but I was expecting a decrease, and the decrease came sharp. And in the space of like 2 months or 2 months and a half, you see it went back to normal. So clearly, this is all due to stores being open versus stores being closed. What's interesting is that if you move to the transaction, the picture is slightly different.
Yes, of course. This is just one side of the coin, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. This is just the sales. So the transaction, you see, first of all, the surge with the confinement was much stronger. So we were in the traffic, we were up to 30%. Here we are close to 50% up. A couple of weeks. This week of April 19, the week of May 3rd, we're close to 50% up. So much stronger surge.
Is that ratio also unusual in a sense, to have a higher surge in transactions than visiting?
No,
isn't it usually the other way around?
Absolutely, David, because in fact what's happening here is that conversion rate has increased a lot. So the traffic surge was good, but the transaction was more stronger. So conversion, people were here to buy. They were not here to browse. They were not here to get inspired. They were here to buy. And you'll see in a minute, I have the conversion rate slide. Similarly, the conversion rate went up. But what's interesting here is that when stores start to reopen, you see that, yes, there is a decrease, but the decrease is less intense. And also, we are not back at 100. We are back at 120 something, 22. And so the decrease and the is there, but not as strong.
Now, what does that say to you?
So to me, it says that many consumers have created new habits. Sometimes it says, you need to do the same thing for 2 weeks and then you create new habits, like for sports routine or things like that, gym. And somehow this is what happened online. Some people never bought their grocery online and did the experience. I know this is my case. We are not big online grocery shoppers because we live in New York, so everything is convenient. We started, it worked. We are very happy with the product we got. The freshness was there, and now we have our cart. So we've continued to buy online much more than before. Same thing for sector like luxury or fashion. Many people were not used to buy online, especially the older generation, and even so the younger, maybe they will buy online but less frequently, and now they're used to be online more frequently. So clearly there are some new habits, and so what it says to me is that in a way, if we land on the 22%, somehow we made 2 to 3 years of e-commerce growth, because on average e-commerce is growing 8, 10, 12% depending on the sector. So you compound that for 2 to 3 years, you get to 22%. This is where we are now. So we were able to make 2 to 3% e-commerce growth in 2 to 3 months. That's basically the story.
Well, I mean, there are a number of dimensions where the experience we've had over the course of the last 2 months has been extraordinary. I think this is one.
And right. when you jump to conversion, which was your question, you see that indeed, because traffic went up less than transaction, you see that conversion rate was up 20% at the peak of the crisis. But you also see that it went down at some point, but then with reopening, it went straight up again. And so nowadays, people, and I think it's very true for physical, but it's also true for online, people go on e-commerce stores or physical stores to buy and buy more. And what this chart is saying, which I was very surprised to see our conversion rates start to pick up again after reopening.
Yes, me too. Now, again, just looking at what this tells you, does this also tell you that the design, the construction, the customer journey of the website needs to be rethought through? If in a sense the purpose of now the site is less about exploration and more about purchase.
Yes. I think many brands now need to up their game when it comes to experience, UX, journey, making sure you deliver the best experience. As I told you, I spent a bunch of my life in luxury, and luxury players are spending so much in stores. So sometimes the cost per square foot of refurbishing a store to make it more beautiful, they spend tons of money. Understandable, because they want to serve the best experience for their stores. But we need to do the same online. We need to make sure that the website is fast, the experience is amazing, and also personalized more.
Okay, great. Let's take the next level down then.
Yeah, I'll skip this one on engagement. So what I showed you so far was across countries, across industries. Let's deep dive a little bit by industry and show you also a few slides by country, and we deep dive into luxury if we have time.
Thank you.
So if you look at the week of July 19th, so the very last week, week of reference, and you focus on the traffic, so we've seen that the traffic is flat, back to flat, back to normal, but there are winners and losers in terms of traffic. The 3 sectors that have been continuously overperforming, both in terms of traffic and transaction, have been online supermarkets, retail technology, and sport equipment. And for 3 obvious reasons, right? Online supermarket, at some point it was difficult to get your food. People didn't want to go out. Even when you were going out, you had to queue, etc. So online was the best option. Retail technology, a lot of people were starting to work from home. They needed new computers, they needed new TV. They had also more time, so a lot of games, and same for the kids. With homeschooling, a lot of PCs were sold to kids. Sport equipment, just in the US, you have 62 million people that belongs to a gym. Gym were closed, so you have 62 million people that needed to exercise at home, and so they bought sneakers, they bought weights, they bought elastic bands, yoga mats, etc. So those three.
They all sound like torture equipment to me, I have to
say. I know myself. I bought a few things, I have to say, because I'm not super muscular, but I had to keep shape.
No, I just put on a lot of weight.
So those three have been up. Media has been up at the beginning and then down since then. I think less interest. I think at some point people were fed up with the coronavirus saturation.
Is that media news sites, or is that Netflix and?
It's a mix. So this will comprise press, so online press, online TV, subscription models, indeed, like some of the Netflix and things like that. Like those are clients of ours.
Right.
Cosmetics has been doing quite well overall, and you've seen transactions also quite well, although a bit less recently. But they surf on the soap. Many players, at some point when we had to wash your hand, they sold a lot of special soaps or cream for the hands, etc. Banks, has been up and down, so I won't comment on that. Home and furnishing has been really up in the middle of the crisis, especially in transaction, because people did buy a lot of new chairs, desks, a lot of do-it-yourself as well, a lot of renovation projects, a lot of gardening. So all those sectors were super up. Fashion was up and less up recently. The growth of fashion, especially in transaction, has been driven by, and maybe I show you the transaction. You see fashion in transaction is up 20% and has been up all along, in fact. But in fact, driven by promotion. The countries where you were able to promote all year long, like the US, did very well during the crisis. Countries like France, where you have sales period, discount period that are very regulated, did less well. And then jewelry, luxury were down at the beginning, like in March, April, people had no interest, and then late April, May started to do well. Tourism is the only sector that has been suffering both in terms of traffic, minus 33 last week, and in terms of transaction, minus 31. But a few weeks ago, it was even minus 90. So, strong improvement overall. But you can see even now that I move to the transaction, supermarket, retail technology, sport equipment, consistently week after week, they were in the 50% plus transaction.
And in that context, retail technology is what? The likes of sort of Best Buy and...
Yes, it's a mix of some of the marketplace, like, again, Amazon is not a client, but, Amazon would fit there, Best Buy, of course, and some direct-to-consumer players as well, like some smaller brands that sell their product online. And GoPro is a client also. GoPro would fit here. That's a story by industry, and over the picture, like if I try to summarize what we've seen. So Feb and early March inverted Maslow pyramid. People were rushing to my food, my money, and my health. So vitamins and over-the-counter medicine did very well. Everything else was down. Tourism, of course, luxury, fashion, even cosmetics, sport, technology, people were not buying anything. Then you move to post-Caroline, and here retail technology is up, home and do-it-yourself is up to the roof. Cosmetics, because as I said, they focus on sport, and then sport equipment. Food was up, but the conversion rate on food was down because the traffic was more up than the transaction, because many supermarkets couldn't deliver, or when they could deliver, they will tell you yes in 2 weeks.
Many. To your point about food purchasing online, we're not a great food supermarket purchase online. as a retailer, I like to go to the stores and see what's going on. So we applied, I think, to Ocado during lockdown, and haven't been able to secure an Ocado order or even actually been allowed to register on the system until last week. So this morning is our first Ocado delivery.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then, so in March, you could see those sectors up, but fashion was down, luxury was struggling, jewelry was struggling, of course, tourism was struggling. And then April, May is when, early May, when people start to say, okay, now this is my life. It's going to stay for a while, because we knew that we had another month in front of us. And so everything was up. Luxury started to do well, also because there are gifts to be made and things like that. Fashion was doing well, especially in the US, as I said, with promotion. The only sectors that were really dead were tourism and events. And then with reopening, you see traffic down, transaction in pause slightly down, but still existing quite well, and conversion rate is up. So that's what we've seen. And I think, as to your earlier question, there is some lasting behaviors here. I really think that the surge of transaction is here to stay. I really think that new habits are being created.
And I know we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into luxury, which will be great in a sec. But what do you think, again, from a strategic perspective, what you've observed tells or should tell us about the way in which there is or isn't a new customer journey on the site? And I don't know if there are any interesting observations that you've seen about some of the players that have done extremely well in terms of visiting to conversion due to the way in which the site is constructed, navigated, and operates.
Yeah, we've seen shorter sessions. Right. So people going to buy specific things that they know they can buy. The only sector where the session were much higher is actually online grocery, because there were a lot of products that were out of stock, and so people will look for products, but it was bad experience. But I think many players have taken this crisis to really improve the agility of the website, add like a one-click button, like to accelerate sales, because it's been a story of conversion, as the numbers and the data demonstrated. But there's still a lot of room for inspiration, and so I think at the end of the day, the players that we've seen are the ones that are able to use all those rich data to personalize. Because the problem is, in today's world, you cannot segment based on okay, this is David, this is Jean-Marc, because the same David or the same Jean-Marc can come, let's say, on Tiffany.com. And right now I want to buy. And so, you have to serve me an experience that's super fast, one click to purchase type of Amazon type of story. And please don't try to inspire me with too many videos that will slow down my experience. But the same Jean-Marc can come back on Tiffany.com a few days later. And now I'm with my wife, I'm on desktop. I want to be inspired maybe. And so this is where maybe you show me the celebrities and you make me dream. So how to adapt the experience real time based on, not necessarily based on proprietary consumer data or private data, because you also are very, very careful about privacy, but more on intent. We see in Contentsquare that more and more, with the first movement of the finger or mouse, we can determine whether this is a David browsing. David has time and he's here to browse and be inspired, versus he wants to cut it short. Or whether it's a buying session or no, we can score, and this is something we're investing a lot, so that we can then signal that to personalization tools that can then deliver the right experience. So this is the future, I think.
Right. So in that future, in a sense, you'll be able to pass back something to the server that gives the server the knowledge about whether this is a purchase, a quick purchase, a browse, and then the server will then change your individual experience accordingly.
Yeah, in fact, there are some, we partner with many personalization tools that most of our clients are using. And so the idea would be that we can signal the intents to those personalization tools that can then deliver the best experience in real time. We have some experiments. Like I said, right now we're still not real time, exactly real time with this 1 hour. So, but this is the future. This is where we're investing in our efforts.
Sure. Okay, so let's take a deeper dive by country.
Yes, absolutely. I just have one slide for 3 countries: US, UK, and France, just to give a little bit of contrast. So, the dashboard tells you what is week of July 19th versus pre-COVID, and then you can see the curve. That's even a better picture. So you see that the curve in traffic in the US tells a slightly different story. The traffic actually was down pre-confinement and not flat, or -5% was I think the average. It went up to 120, so it's less than the worldwide average. But then it's actually going up again recently. It went down with reopening in May, but it's up again. And right now we are at an index +7, which is slightly up compared to worldwide average. And same story for transaction. The peak was higher. They had 1 week at 180. You remember that for the worldwide average it was more than 150 than index. And then again went down, but went up again more recently, and now we are at +33%. So probably in the US, this is where the impact of coronavirus driving people to buy more online has been quite strong. UK is actually also a very interesting story, because you see traffic was down even more, went up, and traffic is still stabilized at these hundreds. And you need to be careful with the scale here, because it's only 10%. So the maximum traffic in the UK was 10% more. But you see the transaction, and as a result, the conversion rate was very, very high. You had many weeks in the UK at 180. This one is 170. And even right now, as we speak, we are still at 35% up versus worldwide average being at 20. So it's a strong, very strong performance for the UK. And to me, it says something. I don't have the data for Italy and Spain here, but I checked at some point. The story is that the countries that were more advanced in e-commerce,
yes,
meaning more,
the penetration of
exactly
of which the UK leads,
UK leads worldwide, absolutely, together with South Korea, and US is in the top 5 as well. So in these countries, you see that in fact the increase has been even stronger. You move to France, and you see traffic reached 20%, okay, went down at some point, and now is again back to normal. But the transactions were at the maximum at a peak of 40, and now they are back to 20, low 20, around 19%.
That's quite interesting. I mean, comparing those three, because maybe it does again suggest there's still a lot more headroom to go in terms of e-commerce penetration.
Yeah, absolutely, because you might have expected the opposite, like to see, okay, France and then Spain, where Spain and Portugal, the curve are worse than that. But you would have expected, okay, those countries are going to make a quantum leap to reach, maybe the next level of the UK. But no, it's the UK and the US that reach the next level first. And that's, I think, indeed very interesting.
Well, that's very interesting. Anybody who was thinking, we're at the peak of e-commerce penetration, I think that's
lots of room.
Instructive for you.
Lot of room to work. Do you want to talk about luxury, David?
Yeah. Oh, yes, please. Look, yeah.
All right. So this is traffic for luxury. You see here, actually, with the confinement, the traffic was down and was in the negative for many, many months, right? Like even like they spent the full confinement almost in negative. So March, April, May were negative. It's only late May here, or mid-May actually, that we got 1 week +10, and then back to flat, basically. So this shows that clearly it's a period of time where consumers didn't have their mind into luxury. Right? If we have time, I'll show you retail technology, which is a category that was much more hot. People who were willing to buy games and TVs and PCs, not luxury, not a good time for luxury overall. And keep in mind, this is very bad news because this is with no traffic in store. So you would have expected traffic to move towards online, but it's not really, it didn't happen.
So
and part of the reason...
This really is about consumer prioritization.
Yes, but also part of the reason is also self-inflicted, if I may. Yes. I think many consumer luxury brands decided to cut digital spend, and I'm sure you saw that at WPP for some of your clients. It was a big mistake because this is a time to double down on online. Of course, easy to say because you have pressure on the budget, and I can understand that you need to cut everywhere. But I think the smartest were the one that cut a lot of things, but kept digital marketing spend or even increased digital marketing, especially for ROI campaign. Maybe less for brand or influence campaign, but more for immediate ROI campaign. I think the smartest player did that. So that's the traffic. This is engagement. So this is like time per session. It's been basically flat all along, so not so interesting here. Transaction is interesting because you see that it was negative. And again, be careful with the scale. We had a couple of weeks minus 35, minus 30. This is minus 20. So early March, late March, and mid-April was all negative. And then suddenly in April, it started to rise, reached a very nice 40% up. And since reopening, you can see the curve went down. The week before was 0. This week is up again 15%. So not clear exactly where you stay here, but clearly for a category like luxury, I'm not surprised that people have pleasure to go back to stores when they can. And as a result, you see the impact on traffic, but you see even more the impact on transaction. Although, again, I also believe that the right level is probably more close to the 15, 20. We keep some gains here. Luxury.
Now, given your experience and expertise in luxury, here's a question for you, which is, at every beginning of every recession, we always hear the soothsayers say, well, this will herald the decline in the luxury market, and it never has. Do you see any patterns currently in the COVID impact that actually will fundamentally impact the luxury market?
Look, I don't have a crystal ball. It's a tough one. I read everything from some experts saying, the sector won't be impacted. People will go back, and we've seen, this day in China where the Hermes store did $3 million in a day. And then conversely, I read many articles where people say, it's all going to change. People realize they don't need that many watches or that many bags, etc., etc. I think the truth is probably in the middle. I think there were already underlying trends, like the way millennials approach luxury is very different than the way their parents approach luxury. And Gen Z, I have a Gen Z at home. I can tell you it's another thing too, right? I'm still very optimistic for luxury because I think Gen Z and millennials will spend in brand, will spend for expensive items. So I'm not worried, but I think it's going to be different. I think just to name a few things that are changing, I think it has to be more inclusive and less exclusive. Like this notion of where sometimes you enter in the stores and if you're in sneakers and jeans, you don't feel good. This has to disappear. It has to be much more inclusive of different people, because I think this matters a lot. I think we have to get back to true quality, and some brands are doing that better than others, but I think the fake luxury and like the old gaming on the made in, I think we'll have to make a pause because the consumers now are more discerning and they know exactly what components from this watch comes from China versus not, and so they make the math themselves. So an appreciation of more of the quality, less branding, like less, more substance, more on culture as well. I think culture is big, art is big, creativity is big, and creativity will remain. I think the young generation will continue to be very interested in creative stuff. So I think this is more a mutation than but I'm very optimistic for the sector overall, especially for the players that will embrace those changes.
Great, thanks.
Conversion rate, so same story. It's a bit like transaction because traffic was flattish. What's interesting is to see, and those charts are a little bit charts. I'll try to decode them for you, but to see differences by country. First, you see that the pink curve, which is France, has been the one suffering the most. Only last week, probably because of sales. Sales started a week ago, and not all the luxury players are doing sales, but some have some decent sales. So, in the absence of sales, you see France was very, very much down. You see Asia has been dull. This week, I don't know what happened. It could be some kind of a promotion, but traffic has been not so great. And then the transaction, you see, this is a purple here. It went up to 50 and now negative again. The one country that has been doing quite well overall has been US. You see the traffic is up 20% in the US. Transactions are up in the 50% consistently. That's good news for US luxury. And again, when I say US, I don't mean US players. I mean traffic coming from the US to US luxury, British luxury, French, Italian luxury brands. Yeah. UK has been doing quite well as well. Not so much in traffic, but transaction at some point, UK was leading. This is a turquoise. A bit less good the last few weeks, but still strong. And then Middle East was very dull, very much in the negative with France. And then recently went up quite well. Last week was not good, but might be just 1 week. So that's the story by country.
Yeah, very interesting. I think my memory serves me right. There was a shopping festival in China around that period.
Okay, so that might be this. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I can't quite marry the numbers. I can't see them that well, but I think around that period.
Absolutely. And now I have a few curves that I thought were interesting. Looking at hard luxury, which is the red curve, and soft luxury, which is the black curve. So hard is watch, jewelry, etc. Soft would be fashion, bags, things like that. And what's interesting is the traffic curve are pretty close. Soft did arguably a little bit better, but frankly, not so much to notice. But you can see that hard luxury has been consistently, especially at the middle of the crisis, but also more recently, doing better than soft. And for me, I was a consultant in 2001. I was a consultant in 2008. I remember that this was the opposite. In those periods, in those crises, soft luxury was doing better than hard because of the fashion components. Yeah. In a way, I cannot miss this bag. I cannot miss this pair of sneakers because this is one of the season and I need to look hot. Versus a Cartier bracelet, a Tiffany bracelet, or a Rolex watch, you can always postpone because this product is not easy to last. So you can postpone by 6 months. So in 2001 and 2008, soft luxury was doing better than hard luxury. But this time is different because with the prices, you had less to show, you had less to wear. So you can miss the bag of the season or the suit of the season. Versus the hard luxury, you have gifts to make, and the store were closed, so you had to buy those gifts. And Mother's Day and Father's Day was there, so that's why hard did well.
That's really interesting. Do you think that's a predictor of? I mean, a lot of people are talking about this whole notion of the death of seasonality, in as much as the seasons, or at least the fashion seasons, are very much a man-created thing. Woman creative thing. Do you think that plays to that or not?
It could be, but I'm not sure because I think it's really linked to the fact that people didn't go out. I think as soon as you go out, you're going to be willing to use the season, like the climate at least. What's clear is that the whole calendar, the whole fashion calendar, which is too slow. Like department store to buy. A year in advance, I think is something that will have to change at some point for sure. But from a consumer perspective, I think the seasonality might remain because it's just the climate that makes you buy. Now, the question is, are they going to buy less fashion product, more perennial product?
Yeah.
So you could buy something for the summer, but you can wear it 2 or 3 summer, and that could happen. That could be, I think, indeed back to the discussion we had about millennials and Gen Z. I could see them more into, I buy something that will serve me for longer. It's less consumerist. Another very interesting cut is high luxury versus accessible luxury. So if you take a bag, we would rank a brand that sells bags in the $500 to $1,500 for their core price point would be called accessible, and a brand that will sell, their core product at $2,500 and then up would be high luxury. So you can see the type of brands here. And again, similarly, traffic, some differences here and there, but nothing major. But you can see consistently high luxury has done better than accessible. And here, again, back to my BCG years, this is opposite to what I just said for hard versus soft. This is completely aligned with what we saw in 2008 and 2001. Like the high luxury brand, or because probably for a couple of reasons. Number one, they target super affluent people versus accessible might target a broader group. And the super affluent people are probably the one less hit by this financial crisis. Because at the end of the day, if you're a billionaire or if you have 20 million at the bank, maybe you lost a few things at the stock market, but not really. And in fact, you're not impacted. So that's one. Number two, those brands sometimes they keep more value. You buy a Rolex, you can even sell it back. So there is less. You feel less guilty to buy a product like that in times of crisis.
It feels more like an investment than an indulgence.
Yeah. And many CEOs of luxury watch and jewelry company have been using this vocabulary of investments for good reason, because you feel less guilty. And number three, often they have more CRM and more intimate relationship with their clients versus accessible that are targeting millions of people. And I think that has played to their favor, because there are a lot of sales that actually are not captured here, that are Zoom or WhatsApp sales, where salespeople have discussion with their clients, will go to the stores, ship the product from the stores. There was a lot of underlying business like that. And then the last cut I had was multi-brand versus brand size. So multi-brand, call it, the Yoox, the Matches Fashion, or department stores of this world, and then brand side would be the .com of the big brand. And you see, if we focus on transaction, you see that the big winners have been the brands during the pandemic. But you can see that with the sales period, especially like this probably French, and I don't know if in the UK you have sales these days, but the multi-brand has been picking up.
We have sales all days, actually.
All days, okay. So a bit of an inversion here with the sales, but overall during the months of April and May, the brand did better than the department stores, because at the end of the day, when you take out the physicality and you take out the store and the traffic that goes to those multi-brand, it's easier to go online to the different .com. That's what people did. But again, more recently, multi-brand has done better. So that's basically the story for luxury that we have.
Great. Well, maybe could you share a couple of data points if you've got them, just to look at maybe something from the computer electronics section, so, just to do a little bit of a comparison, and then we'll have to wrap up.
Great. So traffic, you see here, and again, look at the scale, 160. So the traffic was high, like all along, many weeks above 50%. And you see in traffic, you have two waves. So even after reopening, you had some wave, and I think you see that also in transaction. And again, look at the scale here. We go in transaction 80% more. So a couple of weeks, 80% more. And then even after confinement, I think the double curve is very unique to retail tech, because some people now realize that this work from home is going to last. Yeah. And so they bought quite a bit in March because they needed some new stuff, whatever, printers, whatever, and now they buy again.
It's probably everybody's printer toner has run out, and
maybe as well, absolutely. And you can see the level here. We're talking, this is 50%. So even last week is 50% up compared to pre-COVID level. So very, very strong, very sustained. The conversion rate also, you see, because traffic was very high, you don't have such a surge in conversion rate, but many weeks at 20% and then back to 5%, and then last few weeks also at 20%. Time per session a bit longer because people, when you buy a computer or printer, maybe you need to get informed, and so a little bit less impulse purchase here. And then this is interesting. We looked at some charts of which type of players were doing better. And here I talk about specialists. I don't talk about PC game versus music and books. So it could be PC sales at music and book specialists, but it's more what type of animals are they? And you see that the one that did the best, or the PC and game specialists, so people that come from this universe. Again, they might sell book as well, but they're the one doing better. The marketplace did less good, but many marketplaces here were actually pure players. So in that case, when you get plus 50%, and again, be careful with that scale, this is still 50% for marketplace. Then it means, for some players, it's 50% better than last year.
Sure. I mean, just look at the scale in terms of those PC specialists. Was about 400%.
Yeah, exactly. And then here we isolated pure players, so people with no stores. This is the blue curve. With people with stores, which is purple, and we have a few players that's or more TV and catalog channel specialists, like QVC, that specialize in tech. Okay? It's a tiny segment for us, but to just focus maybe on the blue and the purple. The story is very interesting. You see, and let's look at the transaction. You see that in terms of transactions, the winners were the retailers. They had 250 consistently. Those guys, the blue, were in the 200%. But again, the pure players, 200%, you double your business, that's it. Versus when you do 250, let's say you do 250, but internet was 30% of your sales.
Yes.
So you multiply the 30 by 0.5, you get to 75, right? You don't get to 100, so you're minus 25%, versus those guys did well. And then with deconfinement, store reopened, see how the purple curve become anemic, went down very quickly. And you see how pure players sustain very much strength, having a week at 250 here, a week at 200, and last week was maybe 180, but it's still very, very strong.
But that's worrying for the retailers.
Yeah. To me, it tells that in this sector, and I think we did the same analysis for fashion, it's also the same view, the big winners were the pure players. Probably because they didn't cut their marketing online.
Yes.
As well. And that's something, and most likely the biggest winner is Amazon. It's not a client of Contentsquare, so I don't have it in my chart, but from what one could assume they've been really winning a lot.
So we're just taking a deep dive in one sector, a really shallow dive in another. You've got all this data across lots of different sectors and across lots of different countries. How can people get in touch with you to find out more, understand more about Contentsquare, the data you've got, and how they can use it?
Yes, absolutely. So you can reach out to me. You can reach out to Gilad, who's our head of partnership, works very close to WPP, and David. You can make the link. You can go on our website, contentsquare.com, and here you have also an email address in case you want to contact us. We'd be happy to provide you with more data. On contentsquare.com, all the data that I've presented are on contentsquare.com, updated every week. You can deep dive by sector. You have many more sectors, so I really invite you to spend time on the website.
Now, we've got just a few more minutes left of this conversation. I was putting two hats on, Jean-Marc, a Contentsquare hat and a lifetime of being a BCG consultant. When you put all these things together, and the data you have here, your understanding of how the world consumers and business operates, how do you feel about the future? Are you optimistic or pessimistic?
I'm optimistic because this is my nature. I think when you look at the history of man, there have been major crises, but after any major crisis, there have been major rebounds. I think we've been lucky, our generation, my generation, very lucky with, great economic years and, some crises like 2001, 2008, but nothing really, really, really big. This one might be a bit bigger, but I'm very optimistic that we'll find new ways to strive, and clearly this is an acceleration of trends. At the end of the day, if I have one message to keep, is that there are many, many, many trends that were there, underlying, was coming, and are just accelerated. Trends towards sustainability, trends toward sense of purpose. Consumers, they want to buy from brands that means something. Could be, and the meaning is not necessarily a charity or related topic. It could be even learning, it could be quality, it could be, but those values are getting more and more important. And of course, the super shift to digital, super high shift to website, app, and the need for many brands to improve their websites, their offers, the same way that they put so much energy to have beautiful stores and store well operated. The website, and it's more complex also for the website. So
now, as we all start to get geared up for the business planning cycle in September for 2021, and this year, even more important, trying to work out what's really happened in the Q3 and Q4 in 2020, given what you've just said, and given the data that you've shown us and the data that you have, what advice would you give everybody to have in the back of their minds as they look at the business planning in the months and the year ahead?
First, to be agile. So you need to build not one budget, but many budgets, and have clear milestone, and say, okay, if this happens, then I need to move to budget B or budget A, like a frame of budget, and not something like super fit in your stuff. No one knows, right? And so agility is going to be key, and monitoring. So being very data oriented also in the way you make your budget. And number two, be cost efficient. I think that's very important. But there are two type of costs that I think should not be cut. Two type of spend to drive traffic to your website, especially if this is through ROI campaign that can deliver fast. And number two, the website itself, like any budget that goes toward improving conversion, improving experience, needs to remain. And I'm not speaking only about Contentsquare, but Contentsquare partners like WPP that can help operate Contentsquare. This is bringing people to your e-commerce stores, and then making sure they're happy and they buy. Was the most important thing. So acquisition and retention online. This has to be even if possible, depending on your situation and each industry and country, to double down on that and spend more.
Well, it's been a fascinating hour. I can't believe 60 minutes has gone by so fast. Jean-Marc, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, David. I enjoyed the discussion with you.
Thank Gilad as well, who's been very helpful in setting all this up. And he is the person also to reach out to from a WPP perspective. If you want to follow anything else up as well. And thank you very much too for all the technicals. But from me, David Roth, chewing the fat. It's been a pleasure to have you with us. Look forward to seeing you on the next edition. But Jean-Marc from Contentsquare, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Bye-bye.